Andrew? Tim? John? Gary? Kirk? You ready? What the fuck?
I'm ready, yes, I'm ready.
We're all ready, okay?
Well, hello, welcome to INXS Access All Areas, episode 220 in the podcast that dives deep into all things great about our favourite band, doing with a bunch of patrons and listeners around the world, but more importantly, doing with the most important person, that is B. How are you? And how are you in your post-party glow? We still feel an afterglow, don't we, B, from our fifth party?
Certainly do. I'm glowing, yes.
We've still got our little party on the bus tour Facebook Messenger thing that pops every 3 seconds, B.
I know, everyone's so excited. You know what they've all asked me for today, which I'm getting an order. Yes, bumper stickers. They all want to advertise this on their cars. So, yeah, I'm going to get an order out tonight. So, yeah, thank you to Rachel. She's bought 5 already. So I'm going to give her an extra sticker as well. So, yeah, if you want them, yeah, get in touch with everybody. We'll get some bumper stickers out to everyone.
Help spread the word.
Thank you.
It's better to have that on the bumper bar than baby in car, isn't it? You know, so
Wouldn't mind a little baby in my car one day.
Wow, look, an INXS bumper sticker goes a long way. But I was going to ask you, anything in the post-party afterglow you wanted to share, or any small talk from the party that sort of resonated in the last couple of weeks? I believe you put together a GoFundMe page for Lisa Mack, who's one of our most time-honoured sort of fans and going through a little bit of a tough time, and we're already raising some good money for her, which is great. Did you want to share any details about that?
Yeah, we're already up to 9,000. We do need to get 40,000. I'm planning on every pay packet. I'm going to add just, something. If anyone can do that, then we just keep it going.
Well, let me just let me interject here. At last account, about 24 hours ago, we're on $200. You're saying we're up to $9,000 now? Is that right?
Yes, I've managed to get 9,000. Well, it's over 9,000. Yeah, we in less than 48 hours. Yeah, working really hard to get this. And I'm going to try and get in touch with some charities and see if they can help too. The treatment's costing $3,500 a month. So yeah, we're already up to 3 months. That's good. But if we can get 40,000, then the drug will be available for her for the rest of her life.
Well, that's fantastic. And thank you to everybody so far who's contributed. If that's a sign of the INXS World's generosity, it's great being a part of it so far.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. How's your INXS World been, honey?
It's been pretty good. I went down to JB Hi-Fi on Friday and bought my official copy because even though we got one from management, I still wanted to help contribute to the band's coffers and the chart positions and whatever, and we will probably share a bit of that in the news. But walked into JB Hi-Fi. I was going to film. I thought, don't be a wanker. I think I took a photo of at least holding the CD in my hand outside the shop, and very excited to get my official copy there. And just help it get in the charts here in Australia.
When you say copy, what did you get? A vinyl or you got?
I got the CD. I don't really have at my place at the moment. I don't really have much vinyl ability there, so I got the CD sort of version, which is actually it sits in my little man bag right next to me, and I'm looking at it right now, and love the color design and just the artwork, obviously modern and up to date. I'm a
little bit disappointed. I wanted a little insert in there, like a little booklet, and there isn't anything. So I went out to go and get the vinyl, and they'd sold out, which is great. Payday today, Hayden. So I might buy a few.
Yeah. Well, look, obviously there are collectors out there, and there are different price points, I guess, on the vinyl. I know in Australia, just looking at the vinyl in the shop the other day, I think it was $78.95 for the vinyl sort of version. And look, obviously there is the CD sort of version, which was about $38 to $40, I think, which is the sort of the triple-sided sort of, is it triple-sided? What would you call it? Side 1 and side 2, I guess, disc 1 and disc 2.
Have you downloaded it as well? Have you paid for that?
Well,
I've done both of those.
Well, let me share with you. I reignited my Spotify account today.
Good man.
So as I'm doing it, I'm going, geez, I'm about 15 years too late getting onto this form of listening to music. But anyway, so...
You're sounding like a dinosaur, honey.
Well, I went to put the CD in my car. I've got a sort of newer car at the moment, and I went to put the CD in, and there's no CD player in there. So there you go. So I'm trying to review this album, and I've barely listened to half of it so far. So how well am I going? But anyway, I'm sure as we embark upon the next couple of weeks, where we sort of do a 360 view of the release, we will share some listening insights and things as well. Anything come across your desk this week?
Like I say, I've just been unpacking things, so it's been quite exciting seeing what we've got available. We've got an old T-shirt. Let me show you this. It's from 1983, an old T-shirt, a vintage one, INXS touring Texas. So going through Texas. So we'll have to do a little thing on that, and also got a banner as well given to us from his bass guitars. Interesting. So for all those big fans out there of Gary Beers' basses, and this is something very special, a massive, massive banner.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think, as I said, there were a few auction items that we had spilled over, didn't we? Is the bigger Chris Cafaro print of Michael. What's the update with that one?
I'm keeping it.
Okay.
Do you know what? I thought, well, I'll keep it for a year maybe. And then we'll auction it off at the next party.
It's a bit like the Wimbledon or British Open. You know, in golf and tennis, you keep the trophy for a year, then you handball it. So I think you've earned the right to have Michael hanging above your head for a year.
Yeah, he's keeping a big eye on me at the moment. Get on with your work, B.
Fantastic. We've got a little bit to unpack about this Listen Like Thieves Redux, and can't really do it in one episode. So what we thought we would do today, we might start with Last First, and we're going to sort of go towards the sort of side B of the album release and really dive deep a little bit on the Royal Albert Hall side of things in this week's sort of deep dive, and just looking forward to sort of sharing a bit about that, B, because it's such a lovely, lovely sort of dome-like building. It's almost Art Deco-ish in the way it's set up. I just wanted to ask you, have you ever been there at all for any other gigs or anything yourself?
No, I've never been inside. I used to work opposite, funny enough. Yeah, because I used to just past Green Park Station down in a place called Shepherd's Market. And yeah, I used to go past it. It's beautiful, stunning. In fact, I used to cycle around it as well when I used to go home when I lived in Notting Hill. Yeah, it's a stunning looking building, but yeah, I never went in.
We're going to unpack a little about the gig and the Royal Albert Hall itself, and just its significance to not only British music, but also politics. And, I guess it's had, award shows there and a whole lots of things there. And it's had a nice little refurb recently. We're going to unpack that gig and just all things about the Royal Albert Hall as well that pertain to it and the INXS in our topic today.
And you know who it's named after?
I think it's one of the late Prince Albert, one of the former princes back in the day in the 19th century. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he's one of my heroes. I think he's amazing. Yes.
I'm looking forward to hearing a bit about him. Not the Prince Albert of Monaco, is it?
No.
About 100 years before him. But B, what's it time for?
It's time for the news.
Hi, it's Dave from England, and you're listening to INXS Access All Areas with Hayden and B, and now it's time for the news.
All right, B, news of the week. Well, we can, like we did in the very first episode of INXS Access All Areas, we can release a chart figure today. But look, first week in the ARIA charts, Listen Like These Redux has come in at number 17 on the main charts. It's coming at number 2 on the sort of the Australian artist charts as well. So
awesome.
So pretty steady progress there. You know, we all love it to be a bit high, and hopefully, I don't know if it had a 7-day sales stat, in terms of its release date. I think it was on May the 9th, which I think we worked out was a Friday. So I don't know if it's a full calendar week. We'll see how it sort of...
can it? No.
It's going on a Friday. I don't know if it works off a Monday to Sunday or it works off a Friday to a Friday. I don't know.
Who knows? It's pretty high.
Yeah. Well, look, hopefully it can go up next week and not so. But look, as I said, management's done lots of press. The band have done lots of interviews. There's lots of content going around, and we can hope that it has some legs in this re-release incarnation. Speaking of articles, there's a great article out there saying how INXS conquered the world. It's on multiple platforms on the web, so you could sort of put that in your search engine, and that article will come up. Pleasingly, B, and I think we fell off our chair last week. Kirk did an interview with Rolling Stone, and I was just reading it quite casually, unbeknownst, and then suddenly here it is. We're seeing the induction team got a mention. Then I was like, oh, bloody hell, of course they got a mention. And then suddenly we got a mention. I was like, woohoo, we got a mention. So, which I guess...
And they spelled our names right this time.
Correct. And look, what was more pleasing was that reference Kirk and the party that we had as well. So it was more about the podcast and Kirk coming along to that, which was great. Mm-hmm. And I think they used the reference like an INXS love-in, which it exactly was on that particular night. Also, too, in sort of other press sort of articles there, I know Tim... he must have done this amongst his fishing trip, but there's a great publication called Ultimate Classic Rock, and Tim's done a great deep dive into, Listen Like These, and I think also cites the importance of Shabu Shabar as a springboard and as you just showed with that T-shirt in '83, it was such a springboard album for them to, get the momentum going for the subsequent releases from there. There's a great thing on SoundCloud called The Fake Show. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's episode 788, and it's 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Whoa.
I think Gary Beers is on it. I don't know how much of it,
okay.
but I'm going to have a bit of a listen to that, and I'll share some thoughts in the next week. But it's called The Fake Show on SoundCloud, 788, but it is actually not a fake Gary Beers. I think it's the real Gary Beers who is on that. There's also another good little release on YouTube. I always love a good list, and this one's by a gentleman called Stephen Reed, where he goes back and retrospectively ranks his favourite INXS album. So I've had a snippet of that and like what I see so far, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it, and hopefully you can too.
Can I just add to this, because it was about Gary? We got an email from a guy called Trevor Kidd, and he says, "Hi, INXS Access All Areas podcast. I want to reach out because I've been recording new music with Gary Beers from INXS. And I thought you might be interested. I want to start getting the word out prior to all the music being released. As an artist, INXS has always been one of my favourite bands in the world, and it's been a real dream come true for me to connect with the band and work on this music." So you heard that here first.
Well, we'll do a bit of fact checking with Gary first and see if that's the case, and then if so, we might better get this gentleman on, and we'll see how it goes.
And I'm forwarding that to you, and you can pick that up. Speaking
of potential guest B, and for our listeners, we have reached out to JD's management and put an interview request in for him to come on, and just happened to mention, coincidentally, we're at that part of the chronology where JD coming on would fit in nicely. We have reached out to Philip Mortlock again, B, to come on. He was a very vital part of that era of Listen Like Thieves.
Excellent.
We've reached out also to Gary Grant, who requested 6 months after being invited, he'd love to come on.
Ooh.
So at this rate, he'll be on in 6 months after he responds to the booking. And fourthly, we've reached out to Lee Harding, as I mentioned to some of the listeners before. He's doing a tribute show probably the better part of the last 7-8 years in Australia, and does a great one at that. So we should have some interesting guests out of that lineup in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
In about 3 weeks' time, it'd be pity Perth wasn't so far away, because I'm sure we could all meet there, but the Perth Symphony Orchestra are doing their second annual INXS Symphony gig again. And if you do go onto Instagram, you will get a snippet of Never Tear Us Apart, and it sounds fantastic.
Yeah. If anyone's going, please take your phone. Live stream for us all.
Yeah, that's right. So for those who don't know, Perth is a little bit like going from Russia to America. It's that far away. It's one of the most isolated cities in the world, so it's not easy to get to, particularly with our busy schedules. But if any of our Perth listeners out there can go along, or maybe we can reach out to the orchestra there and see if we can get them on. Maybe we can help punch out some tickets. Yeah,
all of them on a screen with us.
Well, we can get the violinist player on there, and he can play the world's smallest.
That does this? What's he called?
He can play. Well, that'd be very quiet then sound, wouldn't it? The conductor.
The conductor. Yeah, we just get the conductor on.
We can get the world's smallest violin. You know that gag. But anyway,
we'll put that on your list then, Hayden.
Well, maybe someone from the show can come on. We can help, promote some tickets. But that's a little bit of a truncated version of news of the week.
Hey, this is Tim Farris. Big shout out to Hayden and B. Also want to say hello to all the listeners and INXS fans. Thanks for listening. I love you, Hayden and B. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
This is Ella from Middelburg, the Netherlands. You're listening to INXS Access All Areas with Hayden and B. And now it's time for the topic of the week.
Hello, time for this week's In Concert. Pete Drummond once again, and we're at the Royal Albert Hall tonight to welcome those favourites from down under, INXS.
All right, B, topic of the week, Royal Albert Hall gig, June 24, 1986. And actually, June 24 is my son's birthday. So there you go. A few years later. Now, Royal Albert Hall, B, we mentioned a bit earlier, you actually used to work across the road from there. What a beautiful building, what an historic landmark. And it's something that, I think particularly the world does revere about England. Some of its fantastic architecture, a lot of its history, a lot of its beautiful scenery and countryside and buildings. And I guess this is just one of them, B.
Yes, it's in a stunning location. It's right in between, sort of like behind the Buckingham Palace,
right,
and before you get to Hyde Park, which is like on the other side of the road,
right,
the Grand Road there. Yeah, stunning, really nice. Well, and you can imagine what it was like in the day as well. It would have been stunning with all the carriages coming around.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Google tells me that it's been around since 1871, and I guess there was a sort of an inspiration of naming it after Prince Albert at the time, who might have passed away previously. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I would have to fact check that one.
Now, it holds, I believe at last reports, about 5,272 people.
Not a lot.
No, but, as a venue, it's this beautiful size venue where it's sort of like a glorified theatre, like an amphitheatre type setup. And it's quite interesting when you sort of see it on the TV. It's a bit like, well, here's a couple of silly analogies, B, but a bit like the Muppets, like the two guys up in the Muppets. It's got this sort of that's got that little amphitheatre feel to it. And then when you look at the Thunderstruck film clip with AC/DC, it's got that very intimate type, amphitheatre feel to it. And I know people who, bands and things to play there, sometimes they question the acoustics of it all. But from an intimacy point of view and having, I guess, a big enough a crowd, but not too big a crowd to be too daunting and too reckless. It is quite beautifully sort of sized.
Yeah. I can't wait to listen to it with you because it does sound intimate, the actual recordings that they found.
Yeah. And look, just doing some research over the years, it's sort of been the home to so many different types of events. I mean, it's had political speeches there by,
comedians.
Churchill, comedians. I think Einstein spoke there at a very famous TED Talk. If we call it a TED Talk 100 years ago. It's had stage shows like Phantom of the Opera. I know Adele, she did a one-off show there in 2011 that sold like 100,000 copies the next week when they released it. I think it hosts the BAFTAs at the moment as the award show, the Olivier Awards.
Yeah.
It's very classy. It generally holds classy events, and I guess having INXS there is another example of classy acts and things like that. Obviously, over the journey, it's been refurbished a little bit. I think they did a bit of a sort of a restructure on around 96 to 2004 and just modernised sort of parts of it and things. I did sort of go back and look at some of the more famous sort of rock acts that played there, B, and one that did stand out, and I don't think they've been invited back since. I think they were banned, but that was Pink Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
In 1969, they had a gig there where they shot cannons out, which is very Pink Floyd. They nailed certain things to the stage, which was pretty horrible.
Ooh.
They had a man in a gorilla suit going around the audience, which was probably...
Gorilla suit?
A gorilla suit.
Oh, a gorilla suit. What's that? Barbie.
It might have been the ex-lead singer, Sid Barrett, I don't know, but he was a bit loopy in the end. But
they weren't invited back, I should imagine, after that.
No. Look, one of my favourite gigs there that I have and hold dear to my heart was the concert for George that was done, I think, around November 2002, literally 12 months to the day after he died, George Harrison.
Yeah.
And they had, Paul McCartney was there, Ringo Starr was there, I think Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, guys from the Bonavista Social Club, George's son Danny, Eric Clapton, just a fantastic gig.
The elite of rock and roll.
Yeah. Billy, I mean, for the two songs for Billy Preston, who sings My Sweet Lord and famously played keyboards on Get Back, and he does a great version of George's song, Isn't It a Pity? That alone is just worth the price of watching. The sounds of that particular gig, I think Sam Brown, remember that song Stop? She sang around on that. She was there on backup vocals. It's just a very, very classy gig there, and I have fond memories of that as sort of my favourite moment of that venue, from afar, I guess.
From afar, yeah.
Yeah. But look, obviously INXS, and they've had this Redux album come out, and I guess surprise, they've unearthed some of these tapes that I believe around a year or two ago they were, people were going through their archives in Australia and they found some of these old cassette tapes, and through the wonders of technology and Giles Martin, son of George, they've been able to...
it was a cassette tape, Hayden.
Well, no, they did. They found certain cassette tapes.
I think it was a big reel, wasn't it? They found.
Well, look, I remember they found multiple tapes, but look, they could have found reels and things as well.
Yeah.
But look, whatever it is, I mean, the great thing, I mean, look, the negatives when you've played over 4,000 gigs as a band is that sometimes you can take things for granted, and I guess they may have just been passing through, and maybe they were just on this sort of tour with Queen at the time, and they probably didn't think much about it because they were sort of one venue to another. But look, timing-wise, with Giles Martin being in the UK and through the powers of remastering and reconjuring up sounds with modern technology, they found these tapes and they've been able to sort of put them to a level now where, it's now on CD, it's now on vinyl, and, people can listen to the gig itself and Now there's remix versions, as we'll talk about in the next few episodes. But, pleasingly, I guess we as listeners now around the world have access to get this in a very, very high, quality recording, B.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's amazing. I've been listening to it all day. It took me right back to my concert. It was lovely.
Yeah, and we're going to hit those set lists in a moment because you sent me a text earlier today, which was really cool. You sent me a list of the gig at the Odeon there in Birmingham, and then you've sent me obviously the set list of here, which are going to make a really good deep dive when we get to that in a few moments' time. But one thing that has been in our wheelhouse in the last year or so is that there was the great footage of Michael and the band singing the Nile Rodgers song Backstage.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think we've talked about that in the last year with Niall, and we've talked about it amongst ourselves, where we were just sort of raising the discussion of that. I think that might be a 7 or 8 minute interview backstage with the band, and then they show the footage of them, just singing a warm-up song.
That's right. I think it starts with Michael. He's fast asleep, and it's just Kirk and Tim, isn't it? And he just wakes up.
Well, I think it's Kirk and Tim, you're right, but they call him Tim Paris.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, so I looked at it today. Typical, they call him Michael. Well, sometimes he gets called Michael Hutchison, which I always hate, and then they added Tim Paris with 2 R's and 2 S's today. So I'm thinking the graphics weren't that great on that. So, but yeah, Tim and Kirk are talking, and it was so funny seeing Kirk talk today, just how young he looked. He was it was sort of June, so he would have been turning, I think 66. So back then, 29, he would have been 20. Hang on, what do we work my age? He would have been that's 39 years ago. So he would have been 27, I think, in that footage.
Yeah,
and fresh faced and young and articulate as always. There, just sharing some insights.
Very good.
It's a very special occasion by virtue of the fact that you are playing the Royal Albert Hall.
Well, when you say it like that, I suppose it is. We've never played here. I think every new gig for us is a special occasion. This one is rather different, though. All those little boxes for everyone to sit in. Never really seen anything like it.
Come and sit down, Michael. Don't sneak away. Do come and join us.
Sleepwalking. Michael's sleepwalking.
No, he's just woken up. It's a long tour that you're on, and you're a long way from home. Do you live it up, a la the traditional rock band, wild nights on the road and all that stuff?
Sometimes, and it's necessary.
Why?
I don't know, because to me, being on the road, it's like a big balance between discipline and release. You've got to really be disciplined. You really do to do it for that long, to do it properly. And at the same time, you've got to be able to, let go to a point and have a good time. It's just where you stop is the big question.
Exactly. Also, the only sort of time that's really not boring when you're on the road is the actual 2 hours or so you're on stage.
Yeah, you're on stage, and what you do after.
The rest of the time is a lot of waiting. And a lot of sitting around.
You must have some sort of home base a long time ago and far away. And you don't see it, and you're in strange places all the time. Can you see why people go bananas?
Yeah, certainly, I reckon easy. Talk to Andrew about where's Andrew. He'll testify to this. He's going mad, seriously. And he's outside now. And it really is hard. And I can certainly see why people go crazy. How many times can you pack and unpack a bag? Before
And remain sane. Yeah.
and
I just get.
oh, another hotel room, wonderful.
Now, you must have started off, presumably, with a crew of 3 or maybe one mate or something, and you've now got a fair old entourage. Bigger and bigger, presumably. You're going to get a bigger and bigger entourage and stuff, aren't you?
Pretty big, yeah. It's sort of not that big at the moment. It could be bigger. And when we get to America, we get a few more people.
We've had sort of
3 more semi-trailers.
That's where it starts dangerous, though, isn't it? Where you end up like the Rolling Stones with like 150 people as your sort of tour circuit.
Well, that would be one way of alleviating boredom.
So you can spend the whole tour trying to meet them all.
Oh, no, most of it is necessary, really, when you get to that stage. We've got a very dignified, civilized cocktail party after the show.
Yeah, we're rehearsing getting gold albums.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, no, we aren't. We're trying to keep it really civilized. No party. It's just sort of, cocktails, have a few drinks, a few toasts, coffee, and then bye-bye. We're all going now. Bye-bye. Theory.
Very good footage.
Secondly, B, I don't know if you saw this as well through any of your research, but there's about 6-7 minutes of footage of the band warming up, doing some warm-ups on stage and playing snippets of some of the tracks that do make it to that particular live gig. That was really cool just to sort of just see some of that stuff and just, Kirk practicing and showing footage of Gary and Michael and then, some of the stagehands getting up and just sort of having the band prepped, which sometimes as fans we forget. Bands have to go down there, do sound checks and tune their instruments and just check everything there so they're not sort of guessing it on the night.
Well, I hope there's a bit of a video coming out with these songs, and that the songs from the album are going to start charting as well then, and using those bits of footage. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
That's right. So, look, yeah, so I think there's the backstage stuff goes for about 7 minutes. I think the sound check stuff on YouTube goes for about 6 or 7 minutes. And, you know, it's funny, I spoke to Gary at his Ash and Moon gig afterwards, and we were talking a bit about the release and coming up. He was really surprised that they found some of the footage, and they sort of just came and did the gig and went. And he was really worried about the gig because he sort of thought, that from that gig point of view, he could barely hear himself playing, and they didn't quite have a feel of how well it was going to sound because, you know, they couldn't quite get the feedback in their own, maybe their earplugs and things like that, or their sounds that they work off. Hence, some of the acoustics just made it a bit difficult.
Yeah. Well, you can hear it in the first couple of songs that they're sort of like holding back a little bit. It's quite tame, but then, wow, it really pumps up as the tracks start unwinding. It's really good.
All right, so let's go into the set list, B. But what I'd like maybe you to do is, why don't you read out the Birmingham set list from your experience? Because you sent me the set list today with a little add-on thing down the bottom going, I was there. So if you could read that one out, just what you experienced at the Birmingham gig, because obviously it was a bigger gig that night there with what was going on. So I think it might have been up to about 18, 20 songs they might have played there. But read that out for the listeners.
Yeah, so the gig that I went to was on May 19th, so nearly a month beforehand. So they travelled quite a way before they went to the Royal Albert Hall. Anyway, they started with the same couple, which was Same Direction and Soul Mistake.
Yep.
And then they turned it up a little bit, and it was I Send a Message, Kiss the Dirt, Do What You Do, Biting Bullets, Melting in the Sun, Original Sin, Love Is, which was amazing, Listen Like Thieves, Dancing on the Jetty, Shine Like It Does, Burn for You, The One Thing, One by One, which I tried to keep my clothes on. This time, What You Need, Red Red Sun, and then they came out because we just wouldn't shut up until they did, and they sang Johnson's Aeroplane, Different World, The Swing, and they had Don't Change to finish with.
Right. So just counting it up, it's about 23 songs, which I always admired with INXS. Like when I was going to a lot of their gigs in that sort of peak period, they'd always play between 22 to 25 songs. And I look at a lot of bands of their contemporary era, they'd play 18, 19 songs. But I guess the depth of material. Now, again, think back to this period, B. This is pre-Kick, pre-X, pre-Welcome.
Yeah.
So to still have 23 songs to pull out at a gig is a good sign of the depth of material.
Yeah, and they're bangers.
Yeah, and there's 2 songs in here that weren't even on albums. You've got Do What You Do, which was on the Pretty in Pink album.
Yeah.
And that was the opening song in the movie. And then you've got Different World, which was a part of the Crocodile Dundee sort of soundtrack during that year.
Yes.
And was sort of played there in the encore. Look, 39 years later, I don't expect you to remember everything, but are there 1 or 2 takeaways or memories that you can, visualize, remember, other than the one where you ran after them in the limousine?
Well, when What You Need came on, I was so desperate for that song to come on. So I'm just looking at the set list here. That was right towards the end before Red Red Sun and in between this time. So we were really pumped when that came on because we just knew that was going to be a successful song, and they played it so damn well. So yeah, I do remember that. Love Is, I remember the lights going down for that one and it being very broody and beautiful. And yeah, I just remember those amazing outfits they wore as well. They looked so fantastic on stage. But the chemistry on stage and the way that Michael was moving and singing, and it was just electric. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
And here's a little clip from Birmingham Odeon. Enjoy.
What's next is do another song. You right out there? Cry.
So looking at the sort of the set list there, they've at the Odeon there, they've gone and played really pretty much songs off Shabu Shabar, The Swing, and Listen Like Thieves. So they've played 23 songs, really off 3 albums, and they've 21 songs from those 3 albums, and then they're the 2 tracks I mentioned from soundtracks. I guess when they go on to do the Royal Albert Hall gig, being some sort of feature gig there, again, look, you know, I haven't done my research. Did they have a support band that night at the Royal Albert Hall? Was there a reason?
Yeah, I don't think they did. I don't know, because it's such a short list, isn't it, for them?
Well, let's look at it. You know, we'll break it down. As you said, we go to the Royal Albert Hall gig, you know, some 4 weeks later, they've opened up with Same Direction. They've gone into Soul Mistake, Kiss the Dirt, Biting Bullets, Burn for You, Do What You Do Again, I Sent a Message, Melting in the Sun, Original Sin, Different World, Shine Like It Does, One by One, What You Need, and Red, Red Sun. So looking at that track list, we're 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 14 sort of tracks. And look, as I said, it may have just been one of those sort of feature type gigs where they were doing some stuff with radio, I think, simulcast that night. So it was sort of it wasn't sort of what you call a traditional gig where like a big sort of massive setlist gig. It was sort of what you call more of a feature gig. I think it went out on BBC Radio. So there was some simulcast things going there to help probably promote the album. And look, they'd probably come off, you know, four singles by about that stage that probably been close to being released in the UK. They'd got more traction with this album than they had with any other releases, and they'd had some big sort of breakthrough sort of results in America with Listen Like Thieves by this sort of point in time. Hence being invited by Queen to support them on the gig.
Do you know what though, Hayden? If you look at that list, Listen Like Thieves isn't on there.
So I was going to talk about that.
But it's live on the album that we've just had. So have they got that from somewhere else, or?
Well, let me have a look here. I'll pull out the CD there as well. So just to note where it says live on the album there.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So here's the instrument. So there's obviously on the remix set here. They haven't put every song there. So maybe sort of a situation there where with the Royal Albert Hall gig, they may have had more tracks there, but maybe for the official gig, they released 14 of the songs that seem to go out to radio, you know, etc.
Right.
But you're right, it does have Listen
That's
Like
the title
Thieves.
track of the
It does have,
tour.
it does have Listen Like Thieves live on the CD version, but obviously on the set list one that you've sent through. And look, we might better cross-check that. Again, it might be a case of a bit like lately at Wembley where, you know, it didn't make it onto the official release, but it came out later on because of various issues, and maybe at the recording of lately. I think they remastered that one years later. From a setlist point of view, you said you were listening and deep diving today. What was your takeaway from listening to the Royal Albert Hall gig?
Oh, I just loved it. It really did take me back to my own gig in a way. I tell you, when I first listened to it, I put it on as I was coming home from our party. And I had a sudden rush of like being a teenager again. And there was little things like, you know, remember me saying when we first listened to the album, the original one, and I said that One by One, I always said it was my stripper song, or it reminds it. And Michael actually says that on this album. He says, what did he say? He says, "Are you ready for the striptease song?"
Well, it's interesting. We've talked about this probably various times, you know, over the journey. But if you think about the da-na-da, you know, like the strip, like it's got that big brassy ballroom sound of a sort of stripper type song, hasn't it? So it's not an uncommon sort of anecdote to sort of share, I guess, you know, from what you've said.
No, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, and maybe I heard him say that at the Odeon. Maybe he might have said that, and that's where it just sparked into my head as well. But yeah, I love the interaction. I love how they've pieced it onto the album because, like I said earlier, it does start off quite gently, and there's I wouldn't say there's a nervousness, but it's they're trying to get the sound. Not the sound right, but it doesn't. I think they might be trying to hear themselves. And then when Listen Like Thieves starts, oh my God, everyone goes wild.
America, number 2 in Australia, but that hit 51 in England. And facts are that you seem to know that particular song before going to the gig, so it obviously resonated with you on the radio.
Yes.
I think the second single this time hit 79. Third single, Kiss the Dirt, hit 54. And then I think this particular month, June 86, you know, they had Listen Like Thieves. The single got released that same month. So it must have had some resonance there through being recorded, as I said, because it's on this live part of the reissue.
Yeah. And Listen Like Thieves got to be played on the Tube.
Ah, okay.
Remember when Paula first met Michael? It was played then. And also on the old grey whistle test that we spoke about a long time ago. So it had 2 major airplays. And
that all stuff helps too. You know, I mean, look, it hit 58, I think, in the singles charts. But you know, as I said, you know, INXS and some bands aren't always like necessarily their songs aren't always, the chart positions don't always reflect the impact of a song. And a song like Don't Change only hit number 80 in America, but it's probably that iconic. Compare it to Don't Worry, Be Happy. It hit number 1 and won a Grammy. So what song stood the test of time? I think we know the answer to that, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I think they went to the Monterey Rock Festival and played there not long after this as well of England.
And I think a lot of that stuff sort of really helped with Queen, who took them under their wing for some of those bigger sort of gigs and things.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the album itself, you know, in the UK, as I said, it was a step up for the band, you know, having been sort of in that situation where, you know, the British press and a lot of it was sort of Melody Maker and NME and things like that. You know, Australian acts got a really hard time. I mean, we still do to a certain degree. You know, we get this sort of you know, cringy sort of British sort of jealousy of, you know, if you're from Australia. We seem to be sort of deemed to be the unsophisticated sort of child of England, and it's a bit of a running sort of negative thing. And you probably, having 2 foots in both countries, would have sensed sometimes that type of pushback from the British about Australia. I always feel sometimes it's a bit of a jealousy thing. You know, they sent us out here as convicts, and now we allow English people to come out and fruit pick for us. You know, so
allow.
So sometimes from that sort of point of view, it you know, there can be that cultural cringe thing that the British had towards Australians. But
I think some people, but not everyone. I think a lot of people think that Australia is just so far away and so beautiful that it's not real.
Yeah. Well, the album hit number 48, which was a massive improvement from the swing. And look, I don't think the Paula stuff with Michael hurt the sales or the, you know, the future sort of prospects of the album. I think we're still watching some of that footage years later. I think the band seemingly through, you know, not only this Royal Albert Hall gig, packed a lot of stuff, as you said, like the Top of the Pops and the Grey Whistle, various video, you know, shoots and things like that they probably did, and press all around this particular time, because they were certainly relentless, you know, in terms of doing their promo stuff as they did, you know, their touring stuff. You know, we all know the famous, you know, July 13th Wembley gig that the next day they were in the recording studio doing Shining Star, you know. You know, and this is the life of an overseas band with no home to go to. And that is when you're in England every day, and knowing Chris Murphy, every day was not wasted. It was an opportunity. And, you know, we look at Royal Albert Hall, you know, BBC, you know, coverage of the gig, you know, Top of the Pops, you know, Grey Whistle, all of these things that were going on at the time, you know, would have been part of a jam-packed sort of schedule, you know, let alone the European tour with Queen.
Very exciting times for them. I mean, this was before MTV grabbed hold of What You Need as their video, and that then, you know, was it. Legendary after that.
Well, what I thought we would do for our listeners, rather than us waffle on further about the Royal Albert Hall side of things, I thought we could do something for our listeners, and we've had some good interactions with them in the last couple of weeks, and thank you to those who contributed some audio for last week's 5th birthday show. But what we'd love to do is that we'd like to have something interactive, and that is we'd like you to maybe do an audio of your favourite Royal Albert Hall gig song that you've listened to through the remastered version. Anything in the next 7 days, send a little audio through on our socials, either maybe send it via Messenger or whatever is easy for B to then upload, and we'll let you be the reviewer of said song. So we'd love to get at least 5 little audio reviews of 5 different songs, and we can share them on our next week's episode B. So I think there's probably 14 tracks to choose from. Just reiterating again the Albert Hall set list. And look, we might be able to add the Listen Like These one because it's on the album, so there could be 15.
Yes.
But give us your, you know, favourite version, and we will share it on audio on next week's episode.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Paul. That was wonderful. And thank you, Paul, for sending in that wonderful footage that we put onto our socials and played last week. It was really nice to hear him. It's nice to hear from the fans what they feel about the podcast and how it made them feel about being in a community. We feel that, don't we, Hayden? Especially when we were with everybody at the party. As everyone was coming in, it was just like, no airs and graces, come on here, give me a hug, welcome, you know, and it was just banter all the way. And that's what Paul says. You don't feel any better than anybody. You just feel part of the community.
Absolutely.
You're a patron.
Absolutely. And you're part of the journey. And as I said, this is a collaborative exercise to, you know, knock a domino down at a time and help the band hit the Rock Hall of Fame. And every little act that creates momentum matters.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
And I've also got to say, since the party, we hit 25,000 followers on Facebook. We've had another 500 followers within, less than 2 weeks?
Yep.
So we're finding you guys, and hello.
Yes. And look, as I said, we're having a patron pause for the week in terms of asking you to be patrons. If you've got a little bit of spare cash, put it towards the GoFundMe page for Lisa Mack. She's one of the time-honoured persons who is facing a critical battle at the moment, and she is everything this podcast is about. So without her, we wouldn't be here.
Definitely. And I'll put the link onto this episode as well in the description for you guys. So it'll be easier for you to just have a look at that. And $5, some people have been putting 50, 500. The biggest have been from an anonymous donator of $1,500. Wonderful.
Wow.
We could do a few more of those. But thank you to every single one of you that have donated so far. And thank you if you're going to donate.
Thank you, Kirk, if that was you, but I don't know if it was. Now, B, I know I asked you earlier a bit about any excess raffle or auction items, and I know you got the big Chris Cavaro one of Michael. Is there any other legacy items or raffle items or anything we need to hand out to people, or we still are collecting money on, or anything like that, or we're all good?
Yeah. I still want to unpack my boxes. I've still got quite a few, and I've got to get some bags to people that were sick on the day, and I have to get those to them. Once I've got that, I think next week we're up for another raffle or maybe an auction. I'm not sure yet.
Right.
Because Tim sent me some guitar picks.
Awesome.
So we can do that too.
Maybe between those and the stickers, we've got a few little things coming your way. We will next week unpack a little bit more about the Redux album. We will identify a section of it and talk about it and dive deep and give it the emphasis it needs, because it is a newest shiny toy. All right, now we're going to go with a bit of a tribute song today, B. I thought what we might be able to do is splice a little bit of the footage backstage in. There is a little audio of Jenny Morris singing Same Direction, just a little sort of falsetto version of it. Backstage, and we may weave that into the actual live version. That is one of these sort of deep cut songs from the album. It's not a song we talk about a lot, but it's got a really upbeat, sort of positive sort of vibe about it. And, the lyrics sort of, sense that sort of optimism, and, we all need the same thing, heading in the right direction. And it's one of those songs where the lyrics probably surpass the melody and surpass the hooks. But I think it's in light of a positive release, it's a positive tribute song to go out on today, B.
Wonderful. Let's play it.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from B. Goodbye, everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4. We got the lead. We're heading in the same direction, so never let it go. No, we're heading in the same direction, so never let it go.
This is the Dutchie, and you've been listening to INXS Access All Areas with Hayden and B.
Andrew, Tim, John, Gary, Kirk.